Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive headache for pretty much every enterprise out there right now. How do you take a generic AI and transform it into a tool that actually understands the specific, gritty realities of your business? We're going to unpack a brilliant white paper by John M. Kashat to see exactly how you give a large language model the precise nuances it needs to stop guessing and start generating real value.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the AI grounding problem. Second, the 6 pillars of enterprise context. Third, delivering knowledge to LLMs. Fourth, we'll introduce the IPE Pack. And finally, we'll map out your AI implementation pathway.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the AI grounding problem, and exactly why those flashy AI demos fail in the real world.
We've all been there, right? You see an AI tool and it looks like absolute magic in a demo. But then, you bring it back to your actual desk, and suddenly, it's producing totally useless generic results. I mean, sure, in a controlled setting, it can write a flawless marketing email, but ask it to help with your quarterly vendor audit, and it just confidently hallucinates. So why does that actually happen?
Well, it boils down to what we call the grounding problem. You have to remember, large language models are trained on broad public data. So when you force them into a complex corporate environment, they just default to generic industry averages. They don't know your specific terminology, they don't know your reporting structures, and they definitely don't know the unwritten rules of your company culture. It's really not a problem with the AI's intelligence, it's a structural problem of missing context.
To put that into perspective, think about it like this. A generic AI knows what a supply chain is in theory, but it has literally zero clue who owns the decisions in your supply chain. Or say, why your company strategically exited a specific market back in 2022. It might know standard procurement best practices, but it has no idea that your company requires net 30 terms by default unless it's explicitly approved by your CFO. Without that deep organizational context, the AI's advice is basically useless for real-world execution.
Which brings us to part 2, the 6 pillars of enterprise context. Let's look at how we build this knowledge base.
To actually fix this grounding problem, your AI needs a mandatory foundation, and that foundation is built on 6 distinct categories of knowledge. We're talking identity and context, operational knowledge, domain and industry expertise, performance and data, institutional memory, and governance and relationships. You really can't just dump a massive folder of PDFs into an AI and expect it to sort it out. This has to be highly structured.
Let's look at an example. Under the identity and context pillar, your AI absolutely must understand your specific decision-making authorities. If it doesn't, it might route a critical escalation to completely the wrong executive. Imagine the AI drafting a workflow for a medical protocol change, but it doesn't explicitly know that Dr. Sarah Kim, your CMO, has to sign off on it. It's basically generating a broken process from the very first step.
The same thing goes for institutional memory. You know, this is the vital stuff that usually walks out the door when a veteran employee leaves. By explicitly capturing the fact that, for example, your 2021 lean rollout failed because of supervisor pushback, your AI actually learns from past mistakes. It knows to factor in manager certification before proposing new floor deployments. That prevents the AI from confidently suggesting a doomed strategy that your veterans already know won't work.
And under the governance and relationships pillar, the stakes get incredibly high, like financially high. If your AI is blind to the rigid constraints of your external partnerships, you risk massive contractual breaches simply by following its context-free advice. It might suggest a relaxed 5-day response time to fix a supplier issue, completely unaware that your specific contract with Ford demands a 48-hour turnaround, and suddenly you're bleeding $5,000 a day in penalties just because you listened to the AI.
Moving on to part 3, delivering knowledge to LLMs. Here's how we actually load that context in. Okay, so how do we actually get this knowledge into the AI's brain? We've got a toolkit of 5 primary delivery mechanisms to work with. You have the system prompt for your persistent rules, RAG or Retrieval Augmented Generation, which searches your massive document libraries, fine-tuning to teach the model your company's unique jargon, structured data injection for live KPIs, and finally, conversation context for whatever is happening in the current chat session.
Now, the crucial takeaway here is that you absolutely cannot rely on just a single mechanism, like a static system prompt. They have strict token limits, meaning they literally cannot hold all of your operational history, governance rules, and live data at once. You have to use a layered architecture, carefully routing the right specific knowledge to the right delivery mechanism to create a system that is both robust and responsive.
That leads us perfectly into part 4,
Enter the IP Pack, which is all about structured AI input.
This is where John M. Kashat's creation comes in, the IP Pack. Rooted in the Integrated Process Excellence Framework, this is basically the ultimate vehicle for injecting organizational knowledge. Instead of feeding the AI a bunch of messy, unstructured data and crossing your fingers, an IP Pack forces your business data into a comprehensive, standardized, 13-section template that the AI can instantly digest. It's a real game changer.
The framework breaks your processes down into a hyper-precise 3-level hierarchy. First, you have the area, which is the major domain. Then, the activity, or primary workflow. And finally, the element, the specific task. This ensures the AI isn't just reading a flat, contextless list of rules. It understands exactly where a specific task lives within the massive ecosystem of your business.
And the beauty of this is how every single component of that 13-section pack maps directly back to those 6 pillars of context we talked about earlier. For instance, your SciPoc models, mapping suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customers, they feed directly into the AI's operational knowledge. Your KPI cause and effect matrix, that seamlessly injects performance and data context. There is zero guessing here. Every piece of intel has a designated slot. Using IPE Packs gives you a massive advantage because they are already pre-formatted for RAG systems to instantly ingest. This means the AI doesn't just weakly pattern match on symptoms, it actually understands the causal relationships in your business based on key inputs and key outputs. Plus, with a standardized library of 81 packs available, you get total, consistent coverage across the entire enterprise.
Finally, let's look at Part 5, your AI implementation pathway. How do you deploy this?
So here is your clear, sequential timeline to go from unstructured chaos to a validated, perfectly grounded AI deployment. Phase 1. Assess your gaps across those 6 knowledge categories. Phase 2. Structure your documents into these IP packs. Phase 3. Load them into your RAG architecture. Phase 4. Validate the AI's outputs against real-world scenarios. And 5. Maintain strict governance and version control as your business naturally evolves. For your immediate next steps, you really need to assess your own current documentation against these 6 pillars and identify your high-priority gaps. The performance gap between companies that take the time to ground their LLMs and those that don't is widening incredibly fast. You can even engage John M. Kashat at IPE Services to help build this out. You want to establish this structural knowledge layer right now, before your teams start accepting hallucinated, ungrounded AI outputs as absolute fact. I'm going to leave you with this one final, provocative thought. As enterprise AI adoption continues to accelerate at breakneck speed, will your tools actually learn your specific business, or will they just be left to guess? The technology we have today is incredibly powerful, no doubt, but its true value depends entirely on the context you provide it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Go take a hard look at your own documentation today and ask yourself, is it actually ready for AI?